We've got great things to talk to you about. You've all been posting the news, not only reading the news. You've been hearing about in pre-briefings that we acquired Securiti AI, so this will obviously be some part of my presentation today, and obviously will be a big part of my colleague's presentation who can guide you through the technical details. The part that I'm focusing on today is more like from not the commercial, but from the story perspective of where we are before we then go into a deeper dive in technical things. Good day to celebrate, by the way. Not sure if 98 is a good thing to celebrate, to be honest, but Michael just reminded me we're close to getting to 100-day post-acquisition. It's day 98, so 2 days to go. So we're really in the starting phase of working together with Securiti AI. Fantastic time. When I go and talk to customers, this is obviously a big topic. We had a big customer roundtable yesterday, and I can tell you it probably went on until middle of the night if we wouldn't have needed to go bad at some point. But hey, before we get there, let me just tell you about Veeam at a glance. I mean, most of you have been following Veeam for many years in a row, right? And when we just talked outside, someone was saying, I know you guys from ever. And I think that's the best part, because now look at this. When I'm in front of customers or partners, I tell everybody this is our kind of bragging slide. But we're not talking this just to say this is because of us having the product. When I stay in front of customers, this is what I'm saying, this is thanks to you. Because we couldn't get to all of these results without the customers that are actually using our stuff and without the partners that help us promoting and getting on these things. And part of that is also saying to the big PR community, thank you very much for helping us, getting our voices heard and making sure we're always talking about the things we do. One thing I'm particularly proud of is being in charge of Europe, Middle East and Africa, 2.01 billion total ARR, that's the total company. EMEA alone is more than 1 billion. So we're still delivering more than 50% of the revenue. If you ask why, that's one thing coming from, we've been founded in EMEA exactly 20 years ago. So that brings us a big install base, and all of the big space that we've got, especially as we being commercial from the first years, that's what we're still carrying. But obviously we also grew large time in enterprise, and we're now doing more than 75% of the Global 2000, more than 70% of the Fortune 500 companies. So we're carrying a big amount of customers in SMB commercial, but we're also doing and delivering great in enterprise. You see all these net retention rates, cash EBITDA, 2,900 100K plus customers. I think that's sentiment to show that we can actually start small in any customers, and we can then grow big. And now, with all of the things we do, sorry? So again, louder. Louder? Okay. I'm sorry. I typically tend to have a loud voice, but apparently last night ruined me. Not because of the party. Okay, I'll try to be louder. So 2,900 customers, 100K plus. That sometimes comes from starting small with customers and growing big, but we can also land initial big deals. Not because we have the breadth of the portfolio today, and the guys will talk later about this again, but when you think back 20 years ago, we had one product, backing up virtual environments. That's where we started. With that, you win the smaller ones, and then you can land and expand. Now, with the breadth that we have of making sure data is getting secured everywhere, not only in virtual, but also in Kubernetes, in everywhere, wherever your data lives and resides, all the way up until AI, this gives us the opportunity to win bigger, and that makes us number one in market for many years.
Tim, of those
Sure.
2,900, how many of those were pre-acquisition?
Well, pre-acquisition of Securiti AI?
Yeah.
So those numbers are still So those numbers are still Veeam original ones, right? So they were pulled end of last year. The acquisition closed somewhere mid-December, so by the time we didn't include those numbers.
Okay.
But obviously, and it's a fair question, because if you look into Securiti AI, their average deal size is about the 250K range. So obviously, all the security deals that will come in would typically count, even including that one. Make sense?
Thank you.
So again, that's kind of the bragging. This is a proud moment for us to see where we are, but it's of course we're not stopping there. I just pulled this slide, appreciate it's a very busy one, but everything what that should say is we were starting off that one product, and we've never stopped to continue to, oh, thank you for making it bigger. Does this thing do something? No, it's Michael. So, but what this thing does, it shows the constant innovation that we've been driving among those 20 years to not stay, together in the row with customers on where they are, but trying to get ahead of where we see where customers will be moving to. And we've seen this in separate things, and the guys can talk about all of the different tools we've been doing around Azure and around AWS and Google later in the days, and including the storage APIs, data integration, all of that stuff. But lately, as I said, we've been coming to AI. Why did we come there? We tend to use those 6 signals. We're saying it's AI-driven disruption. But let's be frank, this is not only AI-driven disruption, this is general market trends that we're seeing and that make us believe we needed to also go faster into a certain way. Number 1 is data explosion continues. I think it's not a secret if you look into it every day. The number 1 story that I've been telling here all the time, and for me, because I'm easy and pragmatic man, it's always the most fantasizing story. When 10 years ago, I was waking up, was checking my emails, was doing some stuff, I checked how much data I actually used. And maybe there was about the 10 megabyte, the 20 megabyte, 30 megabyte range. Now, just this morning, I did the test again. I was going out of bed, checking emails, checking news, of course, watching the whatever video was coming around, and checking the presentation again, all these things. And then I'm always tracking how much data there is. And I was shocked, actually, to see that I consumed close to 300 megabytes even before the first coffee. Now, that's only me, and I'm by far not an extreme geek in something, so I'm sure some of the people outside would use more. And that's just a personal view, and I'm not a company, of course. But then you see the data explosion. I was working for Dell before I joined Veeam 5 years ago, and I was working on the unstructured data side of things. And back then we were saying it will be a 5x growth of unstructured data every year. Now, these days, you're getting closely to more 15 times, 20 times growth with unstructured. Why? Because of everything AI, everything agentic, everything that senses, and everything that's machines. So this is huge, and it clearly shows that we needed to do an even faster way of making sure we can help you and our customers to control wherever the data is. Now, threat and breach costs are surging, of course, right? I mean, if data is the most important asset that you have a company, and I'm not even speaking only to Veeam here, I'm speaking on behalf of all the data industry, those costs are high. If I can't produce anything for one day, that can be up into the millions. If I don't have access to any regulatory data, I'm really having an issue of maybe even continuing my business. If I want to get back all of my assets, if I want to get back data, this can be super expensive by the downtime, but also by the maybe cost that I would have paid to somebody helping me to get back. And worst case, I even paid some ransomware. So these costs are used. Regulations on the rise. I mean, who might talk in there, right? This is Europe. I mean, Europe, you've got everything, EU Data Act, NIS2, DORA, everything that gets thrown onto companies where they asked to definitely go after these things. This imposes, of course, cost. This imposes different ways of working. Can you see this? Or you want me to go to the other side? So this imposes cost of working. Sorry, there's a question.
Yes. If 80 to 90% of AI projects are failing,
yes,
couldn't you address the data problem by just not doing AI, or only doing AI when it's likely to work?
So the question is, who would decide that, right?
Well, the AI probably. But actually, the people who decide that are the NVIDIAs of this world who are making a fortune out of selling you AI capabilities.
Yes.
They're not disinterested parties.
Well,
and the first thing we should do, perhaps, is look at what the promise is, what it's doing for us, and can we believe what people like Microsoft and NVIDIA are doing?
100%. I would 100% agree with you. I'd say it's also partly kind of a philosophical approach. It's like, do we really need that? Do we want that? Can we rely on this? Do we want this? Well, yes, but it's just the everyday life that's currently happening. So companies want to play that, right? So that's what we are.
I would go again against a false side.
Okay.
Threat and breach costs are surging or whatever, or data explosions.
Yeah.
Okay, but 80% of the data are used just once.
Yeah.
After 1 week, they doesn't use it anymore.
Could
that
be.
It's for cold storage or whatever. In the companies, they use just 15% of their data for analytics and AI. And today, all the industry says, oh, you have to store and back up all this kind of data. That means that, in fact, it's oversaid.
That's right. I love this. And let me tell you why. I was working with a customer in Switzerland. That was November last year. And they had an issue because they had just rising costs of storage. They've been storing most of their stuff in Microsoft Azure environments. They're saying our Microsoft bill goes up every month. Why? Because they did not have good data classification. They were unable to talk like which data do I really need and how many times do I need it and why does it need to be stored like 10 times and all of that stuff. So yes, it's a problem and a challenge for these days. So part of that, what Securiti is doing, where we'll jump later into it, is raw data. So you can actually identify data that's not needed, that's duplicate, that's triple times, that's not been used for many years, and you can get rid of this to make sure you're only having the data that you actually need. So yeah, it makes total sense. The problem is we're all data hoarders these days, right? I mean, it's like, even privately, do we ever delete something? Typically you don't. Why? Because you can just do it. But it could be a good reflex, but the thing is, it's just not happening. So yeah, but maybe not all of the data is needed, that's totally fine, but still it's there for now, so you got to handle it.
Yeah,
So,
no,
but yeah, fair point.
that's because really, it's always the point, you know, there is so much cold data that
Yep, absolutely.
unuseful, unused, and for the 3U world.
So you definitely need to have a good data classification, making sure you're only storing it for the right time that you need it, and making sure that people don't just store everything, and it just increases every company cost, and ultimately that increases the cost of the product. So, no, absolutely
On
with
the
you.
other hand, I see a lot of companies that just take the risk of the data theft or hacks, and in the end say just sorry, and not wanting to spend money on security and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, the analogy that I would have for this is when I joined Veeam, and I've probably been the last one to join. Those gentlemen are here much longer. But when I joined, backup was like on a supermarket shelf, very low down. You really had to go down and pick it up, and you only did it because something happened. Now these days, when I go there, it's like it's top shelf, and you want to do it because you know something could happen. So,
It's not mid-shelf, because mid-shelf is stuff that people buy.
well, mid-shelf is stuff that people buy, but top shelf is the stuff that's more expensive and gets you better things. So that's what you typically get, right? That's at least in German supermarkets. Maybe they just want to rip us off. Could be.
Yeah.
But, but that's what happens. But now it's important to have, right? So these days, I don't see much customers, and again, I'm traveling across the region every week. I don't see much customers saying we don't want to do anything. They're more afraid of what happens if they don't do anything and how soon can something happen.
Yes, but the risk is an unquantified risk most of the time. So they prepare to take a risk. They've no idea how big the risk is. And that's not good management. And the other thing is that they're concentrating still on backing up, but not concentrating on the store. And they may well find that all those backups they've got take so long to restore on whatever
To recover, yeah.
bandwidth they've got, that it's actually not worth having the backups. Nobody ever thinks about storing. Well, that's not quite true, but many people don't think about storing.
I've seen a lot of people, and part of that whole TCO and ROI calculation that we're doing with customers is if something happens, on how fast can you actually restore? Because yeah, it's a problem. You get attacked, you have a production facility. If it takes you one day to get back up online, how much money does that cost you versus how much is it when it's like 3, 4, 5 days in a row? And we've seen these examples, right? There's real life customer examples. So I would politely disagree in saying customers do care. I mean, but it depends on what. I mean, you have some data stored on old tape libraries. Why are you doing this? Because you may not really need it anymore. If you need it, you don't care how long it takes.
The only customers you see, of course, are the ones that buy Veeam. And they obviously do care because they're spending the money on buying Veeam. So
I hope that they're buying Veeam.
A special set of customers.
Yeah, we're working with them to buy Veeam, right? But that's not. But yeah, of course. I mean, they have some certain interest around it. So probably they can quantify. You're right about the damage that it would be. But then again, you talk in industries and you hear people saying this. And of course, there are some classifying the data, saying, "I'll put it on tape. I don't care if it takes like 2 weeks to come back." But other data is more important to come back because if you can't access your emails and enter ID, then that's of course bringing you some danger.
My experience, what happens is that something that's not important becomes important, and they forget to migrate it to near-term storage. But it seems to me that the big issue here isn't technology, it's policies and procedures.
Yeah.
And you could actually use one of the uses of AI or machine learning might be to have a conversation with your customers from an AI bot, saying, what do you want to achieve? What data, if you lost this data, what data would cause you to go away and commit suicide? They have a sort of human language discussion about how much pain the various things.
You know what? We can even offer more.
Yeah, then work at backing that up or restoring that. But also, of course, you need to, train of thought's gone. But it's, the policies, if you set a policy, it's inherently fixable. If it's the wrong policy, you can look at the situation, compare the policies, and here's upgrade this policy.
Yeah.
If you don't have a formal policy, everything is done on an ad hoc basis. And it's inherently
You're absolutely right.
unfixable.
So here's the answer that we would be giving. Because outside of selling software, we offer something to our customers that we're, by the way, doing completely for free. And it's not Veeam just coming up with it, but it was McKinsey, Microsoft, Splunk, and others. We call this the Data Resilience Maturity Model. So what that does is we're sitting with customers, goes typically for a half day to a full day workshop, and we'll work with them through what is the IT you have, what is the processes, what is the people, what is the policies that you have in place. And we analyze this and we compare it to findings that we had best of breeds, right? And it shows you in different levels how resilient are you in terms of how fast can you recover, how secure is your data, how secure are you with the people around you and the process and everything, right? And it gives you recommendations. Currently you're on level 2 to get to level 5. This is actually what we would offer you and what you should think about. But you're totally right. It's not only technology. Technology is one enabler, but everything around it needs to work hand in hand.
I'm fond of maturity model. Can we take this offline and somebody give me an in-depth study of your maturity model?
Absolutely.
How it works?
Of course.
Would love to. Yeah, sure.
Can I just add one point though? All of this is very philosophical. The problem today is not the philosophy. The problem today is the perception that they need to deal with the forward, moving AI, whatever you want to call it, and not the what if situation. It's the question of what if we don't do AI, not what if something happens. So I just want to leave it as a comment.
I should probably delete one slide because you were exactly saying what it is on the slide. Right, so it's coming later. So we're getting to it. But yeah, it's an absolutely fair point. And sometimes, if you are in a competitive environment, you want to do something AI, so you need to be prepared. You need to be faster than others. Because it's typically, and you'll see this later, there's one thing, is you can just stop, rest, and see what's happening for others around you, and then you try to cover them up, which doesn't make sense. Or you just go fast and fearlessly forward, but then you're subject to fail. So both is not really an option. You need to be somewhere in middle ground. You need to be safe and secure in whatever you're doing forward. Right, so let's move on to the next slide. So what this all brought us, I think a couple of these things we just discussed, which was great, right? Because it sparks the right discussion. We are saying all of these 6 points I was just mentioning resulting in what we say very easy 3 gaps that we have. Visibility, AI trust, and resilience gap. Visibility is one, as we were just saying, what is the data that we have? Do we need all this data? And where is it actually stored? And how many times do we have it stored? AI trust is really like data security and governance. How can we trust AI? How can we be sure that the data we give into an LLM is even right data? It's not polluted and it gives you the right outcomes. Because problem these days is with lots of LLMs, if you even use them privately, which I'm sure you do, you ask a question once, you get an answer. Then you say, think again, and you get a different answer. And that's typically happening. Why? Because there's wrong data ingest somewhere along the way. And there's not a controlled mechanism. So that's really an AI trust gap that results from this. And then resilience, because escalating risk is definitely a resilience gap. Right? With all these things coming together in AI and everything data, you're going to be sure you have to be able to control it. Otherwise, you end up in big risk. And yes, it's philosophical sometimes to say, what risk is it? Can we always quantify it? But ultimately, there is a risk. And every company needs to make sure that they understand their own. All right? So that's why, and that was exactly why we are acquiring this company called Securiti AI. Now, fun question in between all those great discussions. Why is it security with an I at the end and not a Y? Any guess?
Could we spell?
That's a good guess. Next one.
It's a typo.
That's also a good one.
They are Italian.
That was yesterday raised already, which I love, which is great. But it's not an Italian company, even though I love Italy. No, the fact is very easy. When Rehan Jalil, who was the founder and CEO of Securiti AI, wanted to register the company, security.ai with a Y at the end was already reserved in the World Wide Web. So the next one was available was security with an I. So in case it will always anytime become a trivia question. I hope so. So that's a goal. But why we're doing is we're combining our resilience capabilities with Securiti AI's data command graph and its respective AI capabilities that they have. The reason, again, for doing so is AI is becoming inevitable. Data resilience is already inevitable. So we want to make sure we're protecting our customers along this way. Not only the data you have today, but also the way how data is used and how it can be used in those models. And there is no AI without data security, but likewise, there's no trust in AI without having the right data resilience. That's the reason for combining these things. I'm quite sure you've all heard what it's doing. And by the way, that was the slide that I was alluding to. So we should probably put your name under it, if you want. That's a new copy there. But it really is, right? And again, you've heard from the accent, and I told you before, I'm a German guy. So what we typically do is we play it safe and fall behind. That's state of the nation, unfortunately, what we're having. Does this always make sense? No. Does it sometimes maybe make sense? It could be. But you have to think of, what is the risk of falling behind and not being the number one in innovation? But also, what is the risk if you're just moving too fast, as I said before? You could fail, and then you give wrong data, and you lose customer reputation, you lose access to your data. Tons of things can happen. So that trade-off really should not exist. And that's exactly on one.
Can I add one point here?
You can.
The trade-off right now, again, it's a philosophical conversation.
Yes.
Boards, leadership, whether you believe it, whether it's true or not, the perceived potential of AI is taking so much of the investment right now that this trade-off is weighed towards the forward thinking, not the risk thinking.
Yep.
Right? Which puts companies like Veeam at a position where it's a want to have or a secondary thought, not a primary one.
So, philosophical question. I would agree, but let me tell you the philosophy that we as Veeam see behind this. Mm-hmm. So first of all, we want to make sure wherever your data is, we're doing this, right? And that comes from, okay, we'll look into your base today of data, and your today's base is what we're protecting, wherever that is. Is it online, is it on-premise, what have you? Is it on the edge? But then, there's this AI piece, and yes, some of that is forward-looking. Most customers that I've been speaking to, but then again, when I speak to them, they may already have been doing something with AI. But most of them are really thinking, how can I embed AI faster, which goes beyond using Copilot for emails and stuff. Yeah. How can I use this for customer-facing things? So we want them to give them a tool that says, okay, forward-looking, we can help you protecting this one as well. Mm-hmm. But there's a side effect of Securiti AI, which I think is for the now, and then it sets you up for the future. And that is, we're just putting this pane of glass around your data, and you can plug everything in. If that's Veeam or if there's anything else, doesn't matter. You can plug everything in. And that gives you, first of all, visibility. Where is the data? Who can access? How does it move? How can it be that I have 10 different versions of the very same file and all of that stuff? Is there AI trails on that file that I don't actually want because I want to stay safe of AI? Then that's already one benefit of the Securiti AI solution. Sure. And then there's a second one, and again that's coming back to Europe, NIS2, DORA, and what have you. In all of those regulatory requirements that you have, with this you're already serving like one piece of the regulatory requirement. So even if you're not looking into doing just AI forward, it can help you protect your today and protect you from any outside use of AI. So you think, again, philosophical, but you can turn it into any direction you want. And even if you personally or as a company don't want to use AI, you got to be prepared, and you want to be prepared that somebody outside is using AI and confronting you with it. So that's fair. That's what we can take the rest offline. Yeah. No, sure, but it's great discussion. I love those. So it's perfect. So we want to accelerate safe AI at scale. Now I'd say we have one more question, and then I say.
Sorry, one more. You talk about trust in AI. Isn't hallucination endemic in the way that large language models work? So ultimately, trust in AI, absolute trust in AI is impossible because large language models are designed to just produce what the next most likely word is. there's no way you can make that into a absolute
So-
guarantee.
I mean, we could always debate if it's whatever you're using, a small language model, large language model, whatever it is. But let's even have, our own Veeam IB that we're using. We have our own Veeam ChatGPT that we're having. So we want to make sure that whatever data gets into that LLM that is Veeam ChatGPT also gives you the right outcome. So we want to make sure that every data we get in is not polluted, is the right one, doesn't have any other AI traits,
Okay.
what have you.
In that case, you've undone one of the benefits of AI, which is it thinks out of the box. And by selecting the data you feed in to give you answers that you recognise as being correct answers, you stop the AI from generating ideas that are out of the box and may be innovative. And that's sort of why you got the AI in the first place.
So if we would go to the extremes, and let's say we're talking about a banking sector, that may very well be true, but they have other interests, than they just want to cut out sometimes the external world because it's very regulated and they shouldn't even do it. But to other thoughts, I mean, even if you open it up, it's just not, we want to make sure that this is the right information, but at least what we can be sure to companies is saying, whatever data you give in doesn't have any other AI signals on it that you maybe wouldn't want. Right? So anything that gets polluted from the outside world, and we want to protect you around this from moving it forward to an LLM.
One of the issues, it seems to me, is just talking about AI, because machine learning is AI,
Yep.
and that's deterministic. What I call advanced computational analysis is sort of AI, and that's deterministic. It's only large language models that are non-deterministic. Small language models can be deterministic, more or less. So
That's what I'm saying, SML.
people need to talk about what kind of AI that they're addressing, not just use a generic term. AI.
Well, shall we carry this on in the follow-up?
We can,
organise
can
it
certainly
later.
do. Happy to follow this up. It's a lovely discussion that we're having, so apologize, we need to cut this short because of the time. But yeah, let's have a separate discussion, would love to. So that's our intent, showed you where we're coming from, why we're doing this. I think you all know already about the background of what we're having, but I think it's even more important that we'll guide you through what it actually is and how this actually looks like. So without further ado, Michael Cade, please come on up.
I think Rick wanted to touch on something Ben said as well.
All right.
Yeah,
so-
Ben, you walked into something that I think is really important that I want to kind of illustrate here. So, finally, let me use my enterprise diagramming solution here. Okay. I think what you walked into, and this is a different story that we're prepared to talk about. And I really want to bring it up because you fell into it. Now, I've known Chris for longer than I've been at Veeam, in the 16 years I've been at Veeam. I'm bald, and if I wasn't bald, I'd be gray. So I've been in this business a long time. But I prepared for disasters like fire, flood, and blood, failed equipment. That was how backup was born, right? Operator error. Then we had ransomware. Cyber incidents as the next type of threat, okay, from bottom shelf up. That was what took us up from the bottom shelf. Ben, today the vision of trusted AI at scale is protecting organizations from potentially AI-driven data incidents. And Michael's going to walk through it, but it's like a third generation of basic risk that we're walking into. And I think if you think about it as a maturation of these types of risks, this is very much the vision. It is not the everyday problem. This one happens every day. This one happens every day. We're getting in front of these problems. And so I wanted to capture that moment.
Your message is blue or red or purple?
Okay, I call that green.
Well, forget that part. yes.
1, 2, 3 is what.
Yeah, but is your message right now the blue part, the red
All
part,
three.
or the purple?
All three. All three. We have capabilities right now. Mike, we're just going to start the story. But
Okay.
it's everything right now. And, from a vision standpoint, it's slightly ahead of the market. Are there every day several agentic AI data leaks? No. But we think there will be, and that's the perfect segue from Michael.
Ooh, good creativity. So I took a spin on what Tim started with. So first of all, morning, I'm Michael Cade. I'm a field CTO at Veeam. I sit in the product team, and my last 12 plus months at Veeam has been focusing on our acquisition of Securiti AI. So I want to touch on some of the story about, well, why are we seeing this? And let me bring you all into a bit of a secret. It wasn't around the AI and the vision and strategy around that. That was part of it, but ultimately it's a big picture around understanding that data. How can we help our customers understand their data at the production layer so they can protect it better? How can we protect stuff that we don't have a good grasp on what it is, where it is, who has access to it, etc. So I'll get into that as well, but I think it's fair to say to the data explosion concept, I think we're all seeing that, the unknown data sprawl. It's not just data sprawl and data being generated so quickly. We just don't know where it is, who has access to it. We're creating data that's only being used for 10 minutes, an hour, a day, and then it sits there because we're humans and we're storing it in our garage and we're keeping it there forever. We then move house, we move all of that stuff again, and we just keep on consuming stuff. Sorry, Chris.
The production data, at the moment, your view of production data is through a backup lens. Are you looking at real-time production data now, not through
Yes.
a backup lens?
Exactly that, yeah.
Can you repeat
So-
the question? I don't think it got caught on the mic.
So the question was, are we considering production data through a backup lens, i.e. how are we protecting that data on a daily, hourly basis? Or are you actually looking at the production data in terms of what it is and how it's being used, is the question. So the answer to that is, and the Securiti AI actually changes that focus. Now, none of our resilient stories, the backup piece is still, how do we protect it? How do we recover that and be smart about recovering that? But the understand and the securing of that data, we're now looking into that production data set as a module almost. Like when you come to Veeam, you can choose whether you want to use Veeam to understand and secure that data from a production perspective, or whether you just want to use Veeam to protect it like you always have done across multiple platforms. Does that help?
Yeah, and this was coming at it from the point of view of wanting to secure production data against threats.
Yeah.
Not, we just want to manage production data and take on from Trees and every other data management business company.
Yeah, this is ultimately about how can we be smarter about protecting data, which then has led into the AI agents that we've seen in the news, just randomly deleting databases. Now, I think there's another issue there. I think if you're giving it too much access to databases and data, that's probably your first problem. They probably need to fix that first. But ultimately, the resilient side still comes in. Humans make errors today. We all have deleted something that we probably shouldn't have. You need to back up. If you don't have a backup, then you've lost that data. Agents are going to do the same. They're just a different form of being able to automate the use of that data.
Michael, can I add something real
Sure.
quick? And Bertrand, you brought part of this up. The data, so much data is not used. The Securiti AI platform, two of the big things that match these trends are identifying redundant, obsolete, and trivial data on production and identifying over permissioned access. You know, those are going to maybe ruin data pipelines to what you had brought up, or maybe limit their ability, but regardless, bad data in, bad data out. But then scoping those permissions, I mean, on the production side, to then think about security with a Y and then building resilience, it's really solving some major things. So I want to highlight, those are two built-in things that kind of go into why we did this.
Yeah,
I'm
go on.
sorry, but so many competitors out there are claiming the same thing, from Hammerspace to Discover to a multitude of companies whose focus, innovation was built on that. And I come back to the question I asked last time you guys presented: why should somebody think about Veeam to do that, and why should they rely on you when the thought, as Tim said, is, you know, everybody has known Veeam forever, which equals everybody has known Veeam as a backup company. Sorry, I know it's very complex question.
The big difference is, if you know, I have my hands full with Veeam, make no mistake. I'm not an expert in the industry. Each of you probably are more. But no one will be able to be as flexible when it comes to recovering data from the backup. And should we get to it, one of the integrations that we've announced that we're going to do with these two big parts of the portfolio, it's really putting Veeam at the heart of the supply chain of data in production, in backup. That's my simplest way to explain it from a security with a Y standpoint, from an AI standpoint, as well of when things don't go expected, bringing it back to their production state. That's the difference, Ben.
Okay.
Ben, to that trust, why are people going to trust us? Like, they trust us for backup and they trust us for recovery. Why should they trust us for the production data, touching production data? Fair point, right? 20 years ago when Veeam started, they might not have trusted us to back up that data either, and we've grown a pretty good business around that. Time will tell whether next time we see you and the next time and the next time, we'll soon be able to tell you whether the trust is there, right? We think we've got a pretty good grasp on that, and a lot of the story and the vision and the strategy that we have is resonating with a lot of our customers, especially as we've started to elevate that pitch from the tech sysadmin, the backup admin that know and love Veeam, and it's got them out of many issues, to the CISO and the security teams that have the responsibility at that data system level and not necessarily maybe not at the platform level like a sysadmin does. I'm going to zip through this really quick. Like, this is just a technologist view that I'm seeing out there. I'm sure many of you are seeing the same. We've got the hypervisor Hunger Games from a backup perspective. So Broadcom continue to do what they do. We have to continue to touch on that to protect our customers that are moving away from Broadcom into different KVM variants, VMs on Kubernetes, public cloud, virtualization and beyond to PaaS. Multiple platforms, data systems live here, there and everywhere. Database as a service, you've got PaaS-based systems, you've got cloud, you've got on-prem, you've got NAS and SAN type systems. You all know this, right? Data is no longer just in a data center, hasn't been for a number of years. The AI everywhere, that was a great point around, there's different variations of AI. We can keep putting AI on all the slides, but what sort of AI is it? ML can be classed as AI, then we've got everything in between. How we go from there, just downloading a model from Hugging Face is AI, right? Just communicating with a private model, a downloaded model. Ultimately though, we know AI is everywhere. We're starting to see this, I've been calling it like a YOLO moment around agentic AI. We saw OpenClaw come out a couple of months ago, or weeks ago now, it's moving so fast. And you're giving it access to stuff that you wouldn't give human access to. So and it's going and running wild. And I think you're starting to see enterprise agent farms and agentic workflows around that. And it's a bit of a domain admin phenomenon again, in that, well, we're just going to give it domain admin and let it go. I feel like a lot of enterprises are a little bit calmer on that situation and not just letting it run wild against data that they don't understand. But we are in a position where we're going to have the humans that have access to that data that are going to provide access to these agents, access to that data, and they're going to let it run wild against that data. Whether it's a database and drop in that database, we've all seen tweets and LinkedIn posts about this, and certain AI people in the industry deleting stuff or their agents deleting stuff. I feel like there's an identity situation there. If you've given access to that agent, it's probably your responsibility to hold that back. But AI everywhere. Security-wise, identity is not necessarily a new threat. I think we've had identity for a while, but when it comes to agentic AI, but it also in general, it's where bad people get in from an identity point of view. They gain access, they log in, they just log in with credentials, and then they grow their responsibilities within that business, even though they shouldn't be there, and then they get more access. They learn about the system to be able to cause problems. This is an age-old, I always have this on every single slide where I talk about this, is about mitigating risk and reducing costs. There is not one business out there in the world that isn't trying to do at least both of those at any given time, right? It doesn't matter what world you're in, what department. The other big thing that I wanted to bring up is around sovereignty. Data sovereignty, a lot of people just think that's where you're storing the data, but it's actually who owns the service, who owns that. And Veeam have always had a pretty good story to tell when it comes to sovereignty, in that, well, you download the software and you feed it, you manage that yourself. You store the data where you need to store it. From a VDP, Veeam Data Platform perspective, you manage that. Yes, the software comes from Veeam, but you manage that. The next level up, which takes away and provides some of that SaaS capability is through our service providers, our Veeam cloud service providers. So where our competition are just suddenly coming out with stuff like this, we've had the ability to do this for 20 years. We started in that sovereign world without sovereignty even being a thing.
I want to make a quick point. I don't want to make a discussion. Your bottom left one about security, identity, and so forth, it's about trust.
Yeah.
And trust is also a big issue around governance, which you guys don't address. I'm going to leave it at that. We can have an offline conversation. I just want to make that point for others.
I'm going to touch on the governance piece as well. So I'll, again, quickly go through this. So this is just some numbers. Again, you guys have all seen this. Identity-based attacks are up. Overexposure, excessive access. We're giving too much access to everything. Humans, but also agents. Exfiltration. Forget the AI accelerated. That's happening too, but data exfiltration is another threat landscape that we're seeing. It's not just people getting in and encrypting data. They're actually exfiltrating it, and that's where the ransom asks come from. And I kind of touched on the last point, the data sprawl, the hygiene of that data and the quality of that data feeds into not only, I think there was actually an initial point earlier, is that we just back up everything. Because we don't know any different, right? We just have to back up everything, which then leads to, well, what do we recover first? Because that app owner thinks their stuff is the most important, and that app owner thinks theirs is the most important. We're just backing up everything at once, like a dumb data backup, movement of data. So one of the reasons that I'm going to get to is the understanding of that data is going to provide us some insight to be more intent-based when it comes to protecting that data system. So,
a quick question about liability and corporate insurance. I'm no insurance expert, but people do take corporate liability insurance out. And I'm pretty sure that legally you're responsible for anything your agents do. I don't think you can blame Microsoft for what your agent does.
yeah.
I think if you set the agent up, you're responsible. And that presumably is going to interface with corporate liability insurance. I can imagine when you come to claiming your corporate liability insurance, they come along and somebody comes along and says, oh, you're using Copilot. Oh, sorry, your insurance policy is no longer valid because we can't control that. Are you looking at those sort of things?
I've got an example. Actually, I spoke with a bank recently, and they made a homegrown AI-powered fraud detection system. And they were very worried about potentially some of the risk of, hey, what if that thing makes a bad decision? You know, is that customer money at risk, or is that the bank at risk? And then they had to go through an audit, okay? And the number one thing that they were successful in going through that audit and then implementing that was explainability. When they have an AI solution, having explainability of where the data, and I'm sorry, I'm setting you up for this graph, this thing you're going to show, but having the explainability of an AI solution is the people and the process thing that goes with the technology, which is the whole thing. We can't just throw technology in it. We need people and we need processes, and I'd put insurance and liability in the process side. Explainability is the interconnection there, in my opinion. But that's a very good point, David, about some of the risks of, you know, digitally transforming the business to be running on AI, and then some of those risks that you don't want it to be a surprise.
Well, I certainly agree with you about explainability.
Yeah.
But looking at it in more detail, some of these AI systems are inherently not explainable. If you ask the AI to tell you why it did something, it will give you an answer it expects you to like, but it's not trustworthy. And some of the things that a neural net decides to tell you to do may well not be explainable in terms of any sort of common human logic.
Just wait till you see what Michael wants to show you. I'm trying to set it up.
So, and you saw this last time, and forgive me, like if you weren't in the room in London where we hinted at this. The vision, the story, the strategy hooks on these 4 pillars. are not exclusive, like we're also looking at elsewhere and out of band of this, but ultimately the first point is against that production data. How can we help our customers have a better idea on that unknown data sprawl? How can we let them or understand how, like where all the critical data is, where that sensitive data is, who and what uses it? One on here so that we can protect it smarter rather than just a backup, just a dump of that data. Equally, once we've got this understanding, I'll go into these in sections and Rick's going to cover the resilience side. But once we've now understood it, we can secure that data. Everything doesn't have to be about AI today, right? There's some businesses out there that are categorically not touching AI or not implementing AI. They might have that. I think there was a point earlier about there's every board level discussion is how are we using AI. That doesn't mean that the feet on the street are actually implementing AI because the CISOs can see risk around the corner and they're not willing to put that data in front of a public LLM or create their own SLM because it could. If you don't understand it, then you're giving access to potential LLMs and people access to sensitive information. But if we understand it, we classify it, we've got a good grasp on where it is, whether it's rot data, whether it's sensitive data based on governance, compliance, and regulations, and I'll show that as well. Now we can secure it better because different regulations are going to state whether that data needs to be protected for this amount of time. Equally, we need to maybe we shouldn't be keeping that data at all. That shouldn't be in any production system. There's a lot of people keeping stuff that they shouldn't be keeping.
That's an interesting point because last century I used to be in DBA and my wife was a documents manager. And she despised DBA because DBA didn't worry about document life cycles, didn't worry about deleting data. And the most important thing to her was to make sure you got rid of data when it was no longer needed. So it wasn't sitting around for some lawyer to pick up and try and read, because lawyers reading data is exceedingly expensive.
David, I think we'll set up a one-on-one, sorry, you can't
Okay.
see me because I'm across the, but we'll set up a one-on-one to talk about this and do you
So then that'll tee up for Rick to come in and talk about the resilience side and then the unleash or the leverage of that data. How can we, now that we've understood it, we've got a hygienic view of our data, but hopefully we've reduced or mitigated some risk by reducing the amount of data that you have. Maybe you've got some redundant, obsolete, trivial data that has been sat on an enterprise NAS system for a number of years that is sensitive but no longer needed or relevant. Let's tear that off to a cheaper, deeper storage or delete it. You're going to save some money, but you're also going to reduce the attack surface that you have on your data set, which then allows us to have a good, clean copy of the data that I'm saying there is across all of the data systems. We understand it all. Now we can start to use it in agentic systems, but equally, let's just leverage it. Instead of just a backup being something that sits there until bad things happen, we've been saying for a number of years around being able to leverage that data. How can we put that data to work? Wherever that may be, that could be in the public cloud, that could be on-prem, use the infrastructure, use the public cloud resources to spin up workloads, spin up data systems, versus putting an impact on the production systems. So just to get through into the understand bit, conscious of time here, I showed this slide last time as well. So when we're talking about understanding data, you can't go in at the platform level, right? The platform doesn't know what's inside a VM that's called server 1. We have to go in at the data system level. Now, Securiti AI, they bring this concept of connectors. And those connectors, Chris, before you take that picture, let me build that out. Then you've got the use cases there as well. Oh.
Well, it's confidential from me.
No. So you've got the concept of these connectors that hook into the data system. So it's going to log into your Postgres database. It's going to log into your MongoDB Atlas. It's going to log into your unstructured data, your NAS. And that's where it's going to start building this social network of your data into this graph database, which is called the data command graph, which is the brains behind everything that we get here, and it's going to marry up file, database, table, user, and it's going to provide a map to where and who has access to what.
Excuse me, is this technology that comes from Securiti?
It is, yes.
So it's graph technology?
It is.
Knowledge graph technology?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're the only backup resilience company apart from Druva using this.
And where we talk about something that we announced a couple of weeks ago, we're already, like 98 days in, already leveraging that from a backup and recovery perspective as well. So it's not just we're doing this and this. No, there's a story between the two now. I don't know if you've...
And Michael, I have a point around that as well. So what you're showing right now on the screen is commercially available to customers using Securiti AI, right?
Exactly
it's
that.
not about the vision to integrate.
Yeah, you don't need Veeam. At this point, you can go and
That's just
procure
Securiti
and
AI.
buy
Okay.
Securiti AI right now and get this capability. And I think I've laboured the point already, but just some of the use cases around once you've understood that data, now you can get a good grasp on, well, what is the sensitive data across all my different data systems? I've added all of my data systems into the machine, or into the graph, and now I've got a good idea about what that is. Rot analysis, redundant, obsolete, trivial, data that's been around for a long time, it doesn't need to be there, it's potentially sensitive, but if it's just been there for a long time, like to the initial point about data doesn't last that long, it doesn't have a valid shelf life or whatever the term you used was. Well, let's get it off that expensive storage in the data center or in the cloud, tear it off or delete it. Let's get rid of it. Because then we're reducing our attack surface as well. We're not only mitigating, we're not only just reducing cost, we're also mitigating the risk as well because we're reducing the attack surface.
I assume you have excellent security around this nicely aggregated list of every important thing across my entire organisation that you've just put together that is maybe now available to operators who I didn't necessarily want to have that much information about some of my workloads.
So there is a fully featured role-based access control. Again, we can go into the weeds about this. So yeah, it's built on a role-based access control. No operator in Securiti AI can actually see the data. So you can't just click on a PDF file and see someone's passport or sensitive information. That can't happen. Equally, the metadata is being sent into that graph database, not the full data set. I'm going to go quick. I think we'll share these demos because I think I want to show the interface of Data Command Center just briefly, but
I think everyone here does want to see the demo. Maybe
I want to show a couple.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, do show a couple.
So what does day one look like? Well, one is we have to know what the data systems. You've got to add in all of them data systems to get that social network. If you miss out a fundamental piece of that data puzzle, then now we can't see who has access to it, what sensitive data is in it. If we don't see it, you can't have any visibility into that. And we start with these connectors. So connectors based on IaaS cloud or data systems. So IaaS first is the ability to hook into your public cloud environment. And what that's going to do is an inventory of all of the resources that you have within that public cloud. It's going to go and find out your RDS instances, your EC2 instances, your databases that you're using in Redshift or Redis or Elasticache or whatever Amazon call it these days. But ultimately, it's going to go and inventory all that, and then based on a policy, it's going to start classifying that data. Now, sorry, Chris.
It's right. This is a scan, and you're producing a data map.
Into the graph, yes.
And it's going to the whole, I zoomed in and paused it. It's going to the whole AWS account. So all those objects and services, that's super important.
And without getting into the weeds too much, that can be based on an AWS organization to the role-based access control question. It can be based on an IAM AWS key and secret ID. It can be very granular about what access to systems you have on that as well.
Oh, let me do it. Okay.
Is this the second video?
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we're good. Leave it. Did you click it?
No, hold on.
Right, so the thing, and this is there today, right, in terms of data systems. So looking at the data systems, the Jira Cloud, you can see there's a very long list. They're all your well-known databases. NoSQL, SQL, your NAS, but equally your M365. And that is actually where we first integrate into Veeam's resilient technologies to be able to protect those. Long list, Databricks, data lakehouses, big data assets that we, from a Veeam point of view, we don't protect today from a backup perspective. But more and more asks are coming in around that. But ultimately, this is about understanding that data. How can we understand it and help you secure that data? You can see a long list
I've got
on that.
questions. All these kind of processes are immutable. It means that even an admin couldn't change this by a prompt injection or whatever.
This is read only. We're only reading that data.
Okay.
We can't write anything back to it.
No, I mean that by prompt injection to change the process.
I don't understand.
We're not at the prompts part. We're just gathering all the data sources to build the graph at this point. So we're before.
After it take action and remediate on Amazon S3. That's right. Okay.
So we could get.
When it triggers the action,
Yeah.
is this way to trigger is immutable? That you can change it, because by prompt injection we have seen that you can change and
Yeah.
to have a malicious prompt and to say remediate, and in fact it was wiped out.
So there is no natural language to remediate anything, any security posture. I haven't got to the security bit, but I'm conscious of time. Any of the remediation is not autonomous. It doesn't just happen. It's going to give you it's going to flag it up. It's going to say, this S3 bucket is open to the world. It's not going to go and fix that for you. It's going to give you that information,
That's all.
and then you go, that's where the admin needs to come in and make that change.
No, I have understood that it takes autonomous action.
Yeah, no, it doesn't fix that.
All right. You're searching for Amazon.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. So the whole idea of this short demo, one, is to show you the data command center, so the UI in front of Securiti AI, but also to show the extensive range of data systems that it connects into. So all of those different data systems across. How does it get this information? I won't show this demo. The next demo is it uses the concept of pods. To confuse everyone, like that pod can be run in Kubernetes, but it also can be on a Linux physical server, virtual server, that's close to the data system. So that could be hosted in AWS. It could be self-hosted by us with a later announcement. It could be part of a Kubernetes deployment, and it could be part of a Linux distribution. So it could be installed. Very similar, if you're familiar with Veeam, very similar to our proxy. Except for a proxy is lifting and shifting data, it's moving data from A to B. This is scanning data and then sending that metadata up into the data command center. Just some of the data sets, so pre-built into that is around PII, but also PHI, PCI, and other regulatory and compliance regulations around like identifying individual files, what is inside of that file could trigger one of these content profiles around like this is PII data, social security numbers, addresses, names, email addresses, etc. Could be that. These content profiles look at that metadata that's been scanned across all the different data systems and finds this data element in this case a credit card number, and it looks across all of these different document types that you have. Again, all of this is out of the box. It can be customized though, so appreciate like we're going to have the EU AI Data Act, we're going to have GDPR, we're going to have like the main regulatory and compliance frameworks in place already into the system, but you can add your own. If you're a financial institution in XYZ that has a company-based regulation, you can add your own in there.
How do you deal with derived information that, obviously you know that certain social security number identifies a person. It may be possible to identify a person with 5 or 6 different items analysed together. So, I mean, classically, if you've got a village in Kent, there's only one millionaire that lives there. If you know that person has a net worth above £1 million and they live in that village in Kent, you know who they are.
Yeah, I think a follow-up, without getting into the weeds around that, but we have a lot of ways to get rid of those like false positives and enabled to take an 11-digit number and derive that, well, is it a credit card or not a credit card? Because it's very easy just to type out an 11-digit number that would never ever be a credit card number.
Yeah.
So we have ways in which we do that.
And David, one of the logics is even searching for a financial statement right here. It's right in that example.
And that's built on characteristics of different file types. Like no one's called, well, I guess some people do, financial statement.xl. Like that could happen, but generally it's going to be called something sporadic. I'll miss out that demo. I do want to share, like there are people, but time is precious. From a security point of view, so this also brings, now that we've understood that data, we have a good grasp on it, hopefully we've helped our customers reduce their attack surface and reduce some costs maybe, and just give them a better understanding. I'll coin one of Rick's phrases around, like, once you start understanding your data, you're going to find something out about your data that you didn't know about in that light, right? I've spoken to massive, large-scale enterprises over the last few months, and they have no way of knowing what data they've got across all these different platforms. Like, it's incredible to think, but also no one should be embarrassed because the world isn't set up that well for this. But now we've understood it, we can now start looking at a security posture around that. So what sort of role does a certain AWS S3 bucket, like, probably shouldn't be open to the world? Again, these best practices are built into the data command center. So when you inventory your AWS account, it's going to proactively look at your configuration as well and flag up these areas. If an S3 bucket is open to the world or a SharePoint link has been shared for longer than a week, it's going to flag that up. You can then define policies along that, and it has a very simplified ticketing system itself, but it also interacts or integrates into ServiceNow from a ticketing point of view. So anything open, S3 buckets open, it can actively open a ticket within ServiceNow. Finding, there's your simple ticketing system, open, passed, closed, fixed, failed. But again, most of the enterprises that we see are using some sort of ServiceNow. Now that we've understood the data as well though, and this starts to go to that retention age, it starts to go to sensitive data, the user role, why does that user have so much access to all of these databases or all of these data systems or these particular types of data? That shouldn't be happening. And it will give you, hopefully it will give you a good visual of, oh, we need to go and fix Tom Jones and not give him access to so much data. Also, there's stuff around AI usage, if that's being used, if it's being shared. If you're sharing a file from your OneDrive into an LLM, then it's going to provide you insight into that. Again, so many demos, not enough time.
This one, yeah, do this one.
In fact, let's start with that one, because so this is one of the visualization of the command graph, and probably you won't see it at the back here, but it's going to contain a number of these these like spokes. So what account, what rule, what policy, finding, topic, table, site, and obviously depending on the data system, they're going to have different elements to that. Now we can click into these and get insight into, right, who else has access to this? So for example, if I want to look for the security posture policy for all Amazon services, you can see here that, cheers Rick, you can see that I've got my policy, and then from this, it's very difficult because I've missed out other demos beforehand, but because of time. But but you can see these are all out of the box best practices when it comes to securing your AWS footprint. And you can see here that I have an RDS cluster, and these are the regulations, and I think these are called frameworks, standards. So things like ISO 27001, and based on that, it's flagging up these best practices, these security best practices based on that standard, but also based on the regulations as well. So it might be CCPA, GDPR, etc. Like that, they could form part of that discovery, but also that ongoing fix to that. This is an element of being able to look into that graph. So you can see we've discovered location, the account, a policy, the security user that has access to it, how many EC2 instances, the database cluster nodes, and you can click on and go into those into more detail. Who has access to what? But really, this is about the data security posture, like what's not configured correctly in my environment.
Can we look at these ourselves?
Yeah, I'll have to figure a way of sharing. I should have known there was going to be a load of questions and shouldn't have packed it full of demos.
You have been to Technology Live before, you know, Michael?
Yeah, I feel like we didn't have as many questions in the London event.
A lot, yeah.
Next time I'm just going to bring a laptop and a lab. I'm not going to bring any slides. We're just going to show and tell. We're just going to go for it. But obviously the last demo was a lot of digging in. We have to know what we need to know to go and look and find that. So there's an overview dashboard that is going to bring everything up to a top visualization of that. So then you can start drilling down into things that you're responsible for. Again, this isn't changing any of this. This is just going to give you advice. That S3 bucket over there is open to the world. Like, go and fix that.
Do you have different dashboards for different profiles, personas?
Yeah.
Because I imagine that would be interesting. Right?
Yeah, and you can. So there's out of the box one. So you'll see here. So data and AI security, top level view. It's going to give you all of the data systems, everything across that. Let's see. It's already going into like your data warehouse, your top 20 roles that have access to sensitive data. But there's a specific to M365. There's a specific to unstructured data. But you can also go and create one. Like maybe you're a sysadmin, or maybe you're a security team that only look after AWS. I only want to see. I don't care about the Google.
Yeah, because that was what I was going for, right? Because there are different people nowadays, and all the roles are merging, and everybody's doing the same things, and we need to be able to offer an overview for.
So based on this whole UI can be set up to be more granular from a visualization point of view. You don't have to. The scoping of this dashboard doesn't need to be everything.
Okay.
Michael, what's the status of PQC at Veeam?
I'm going to let Rick touch on that from a resilience.
It's reasonable to expect we'll have an answer for that this year, but nothing to share at this time.
This year, as in next Tech Live?
No, that's 2 months.
Maybe.
Well,
Nice try.
Maybe. That's very close to the summer.
It's eventually yes, but I can't tell you. It'll be this year, but yeah, there will be a time we tell you yes about it this year.
Ask the question in Munich. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the answer we want.
Just to wrap things up from a security point of view, again, apologies I haven't been able to show all the demos. Understanding that data, so we released something called Agent Commander. We can go through a deeper dive briefing on this as well. But this is really that first integration point of security AI from an understand and security point of view into the Veeam resilience story. Taking them technologies and merging them together. One, it's about understanding that data, detecting AI. So a data system could be an AI agent, an LLM in your environment. It's going to inventory all of that, the models and everything you're using from an agent point of view. It's then going to, from a Veeam perspective, we're protecting that, but equally we can label that file. Who has access to that data and the agent? What does the prompts look like? What does the retrieval of data look like? And then more importantly, when that agent does go rogue, and this is going to start off in M365 data, so the ability to roll back. Agent goes and starts making changes to OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. How do we undo that? And we're ultimately using Veeam's technology behind the scenes to be able to undo, restore that data back into M365.
Fundamentally, there's some things you can't undo. If you send a check out of the bank, there's no way you can recall that check, which the customer will actually give the check back. So,
I'm not sure I follow.
Well, the damage is done, I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah, you can't undo stuff. Some things you can't undo.
Well,
Like
you can mitigate more of the problem, put it that way.
Yes, but if you send somebody money,
Yeah.
they're very unlikely
Yeah.
to just give it back if you ask them.
Right. So, we're talking about like changing data, changing files. Like if a transaction's been made by an agent, like I'm not sure I've seen an agent in M365 making any transactional payments to anything, but it could. I guess it could happen.
Well,
So yeah.
if you've got somebody in your business that's made a business decision based on the M365 data, that business decision has actually changed the way your business works. You can't actually back that out.
Or once the data's leaked, you can't unleak it. You
Yes.
could restore it, but you'll plug the leak. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
you're right, David. There is still an impact, but we're at least providing the visibility to mitigate that quicker in a more complicated world.
What I like about this is it's not just a straight technology solution, buy technology and fix it.
Yeah.
It lets you tell the regulators that you have a managed security posture, and you should be able to convince the regulators that you're in control of your security, not just relying blindly on some technology magic.
David, good point. And so what we're going to do with the last part of the time is I want to really explain to you why Veeam is different than maybe 2 other backup products you're going to hear from today, companies. No, I think that might be why Veeam, what's different, right? I want to go back to this diagram here. This understand and secure that Michael spoke about, that is a big differentiator. The data command graph, which were those demos that we started going through, that is so I don't want to say so comprehensive, but it is really a very different conversation. The over 300 connectors. He started searching for Oracle and 8 came up. Search for Microsoft and I can't even count how many came up. That one example where we've got, a Snowflake, data lake, you got some S3 buckets and some apps. Looking at that production estate, organizations can understand it, make that graph, work on the security, which would be permissions, things like who has access to what systems have access to what. And in fact, one of the 6 use cases that you took the picture of, Chris, was probably another yet differentiating one, which is a breach impact analysis. Because my thought is, that's really incredible to do that before something happens. To your point, David, if something did happen, we also have the tooling to visualize where and how that could have happened, because so many times that's an after the fact incident, and a lot of times organizations struggle with what's the blast radius, okay? So in a way, just park AI for a second. Think of that data command graph. Having the visibility of these data, sources, applications, multi-tiered applications, enterprise solutions, on-prem, cloud, and more, applying the security to its run state to then feed how we keep it protected. That's really the difference that we're on. And, was it 98 days since acquisition? Our biggest priority this year is to integrate our resiliency products across the portfolio here. So that data command graph is going to be an instrumental part of Veeam's future, and it will be an absolute differentiator. So I think it's a lot of technology. I'm not going to lie. There's cloud elements, there's on-prem elements, there's connectors, there's applications, there's data sources, and more. But the thought here is that once we understand what we have, and I'll be the first to say, it was Bertrand talking about there's all this data that people don't use, and that's true. In fact, I'd go one step further and hear that most of their data is useless. Okay.
Can I use
Yeah.
your knowledge graph, the
Yeah.
security stuff, to ask my IT estate, what's the protection posture of my most sensitive data?
Absolutely.
Protection posture.
Posture.
And then it comes up with, well, this is protected, this isn't protected, this could maybe be protected more. And you then use that to trigger Veeam.
Yes. So Chris, you're walking into our roadmap, okay? Agent Commander is the first announcement of integrating the two portfolio elements. But I have aspirations, Chris, of flipping the concept of like a consistency group on its head. And the thought of a consistency group is that XYZ app has these 7 elements and we protect it. What if we're visualizing it in what we can do in the data command graph and feeding that into protection? Those are the crazy ideas that I have. And then when you think about understanding the data, securing the data, keeping it resilient, that is the difference. That is the Veeam difference that we're walking into right now. And I think that if you think about these 3 risks, fire, flood, and blood, hardware failure accidents at tier 1, tape falling off of a truck type of thing, the 2nd generation of ransomware, cyber incidents, inside actors, and this 3rd generation of this agentic era, it is the perfect time to think this way. And that's, in my opinion, that's the difference of the different products you'll see in the space here today. Now, I want to cover a little bit, and apparently my mouse doesn't work behind the computer.
What about the fourth
step
in that?
Unleash. Now that's the vision. That's the thought is once you have full control of your data, you can do so much with it. And what I mean by that is that if you have your data secured, resilient, and understood, you can unleash the potential of it. Next generation insights, analytics, predictive elements at the business level. Probably that's a further vision statement because I'm not going to misrepresent Ariane. There's a lot of work to do here, a lot of work to do here, and a lot of work to do here when I talk to customers. They truly don't know what they have, and the only practical way to understand that is with AI. And any of you who talk to clients would probably understand. But this is the vision, and we're bringing the tooling to do it. And then when I would go talk to a client, I would recommend that they start small, okay? Don't start with the biggest, gnarliest, most critical application. Take something of medium scope, get a success in your organization, and build on that. Prove the process before you fix the massive problem. Now, I want to just give a thought here. Make no mistake, we have an incredible vision, and I think it was Ben's question of how much of the revenue that Tim showed was Veeam revenue and customer count were Veeam revenue. By far, most of our revenue is resilience, okay? We're not at a point yet of allocating, product portfolio revenue in public. Can do in private. Happy to talk to you about that. This is analyst inquiry season, so we're having to do that, and I'm fresh off of that. Most of our money comes from that resilience side of our business, no question. But the vision play of where we're going, of what Securiti AI has brought to us, is the difference here. Yet, I never want people to forget of potentially bad things that can happen to good data. So Bill Siegel this is another area where Veeam is different, is our incident response business unit. We acquired a company called Coveware in early 23. And true story, before we started doing our own ransomware trends and all of that, I would go to coveware.com and get some really incredible insights. How are threat actors getting in? What are they doing once they get in? What are the top 10 threat actors out there? But this is something I take to heart. Bill says, I can tell in the first 15 minutes of a conversation how well or poorly an incident response is going to go just based on how prepared an organization presents themselves during the initial phone call. And my thought here is, yes, there's a understand, secure, resilient, unleash. But this resilient one is super important. When we think about the potentially good data subject to bad things, this is the heart of what we do. And whether it's keeping data safe from ransomware, natural disaster, aligning to all the compliance and sovereignty type of rules, we never want organizations to be in this type of a risk situation. And while we were in the background, Ben, I actually pulled up the, this was my, my bad draw. I snuck this in here, but the thought here is that our threats are operational things, fire, flood, and blood, cyber, and AI. There's plenty of things that can go wrong. And when I look at that, you know, non-human identities and agents can potentially be it. There used to be human threat actors. You know, there's so many risks to our data. I want you to know that our business success, and we are currently tied with another provider for #1 global market share. I think we're going to pull away when IDC pulls out the semi-annual tracker. I know you'll pick that up. I'll be waiting for your take on it. But the thought here, what's that? No. No.
Never mind. It's
No.
just,
But when I look at this foundation of bringing good data safe back from bad things, thank you. I got a clock too, Fred. I know what time it is. Come on. The foundation of what we do is keeping that good data safe from bad things. But then imagine the potential of having it understood and secured in production. This full cycle, this supply chain of data, that is where we're going. And this is a non-exhaustive list of what could go wrong. And my thought here is that is the difference for the other providers you're going to see today that are in this same business as well. Now, make no mistake, the other folks that are going to be up here today, we all agree. We want to keep good data safe from bad things. Just internally, we agree on that. Externally, we compete in the field to make that happen. And the reality is we have to bring something different, and what we've done with our understand and secure is the difference. So that data command center is the future. And we've got a couple more minutes. I think there's still more questions. Let's do that. David.
How about cost?
Cost?
Because obviously Securiti AI was a freestanding product, still is a freestanding product. But as far as I remember, the self-claim from Veeam is that they were going to you were going to integrate it into the Veeam data platform. So how much is it going to cost the partners and the customers to adopt this really special technology? It seems a big jump for Veeam.
It's a massive extra set of capabilities. I will tell you, when I personally talk to especially large organizations, when the security with a Y is a priority, usually the budget with the B is not, okay? Now, it sounds a little jokey, but the reality is there's too much risk not to do it right, Anthony. And my take is they have to do it, and especially fintech, healthcare, the compliance kind of doesn't give you a choice. Further, this isn't the year, but if you look into 2027, I think it's reasonable to expect Veeam will come out with integrated pricing and packaging and discounts and the games we play. But for this audience, that's probably not the, I don't want to get into pricing, but
it is for me. I'm interested in. I'll write about channel.
Okay, fair. So we haven't really gone integrated pricing for this year, but I watch that space next year. That's the official answer.
It's on a, so Securiti as a standalone is on a per storage. It's on a storage production storage.
Source terabyte consumption priced. Because there's a lot of potential data to analyze.